here things run very poorly and generally just suck all around. I'm actually going to take this and change it up a little bit. And if Kayla didn't think she was very needed, she just got showed that she's very wrong. She is. Welcome into our midweek update. Very, very somber, kind of quiet time here in Jefferson City. A lot of the things that you would normally see the last week before spring break is a very active legislative week. The Senate would be up all night. You could go to my Twitter, Missouri Times Twitter, and read about all the back and forth. The House would usually pass a bunch of stuff. Normally, in a normal situation, um, there's interesting things going on all over. It's a time for the news business. I want to first of all, right off the top, leave a shout out to Caitlin Shellhorn, the editor of the Missouri Times. She's been all over this story. It's been there's a sometimes you come to us for maybe a more in-depth look at state government or some stories you wouldn't normally get. She's been on top of stories that I think everyone is generally interested in, and she deserves a lot of credit. And thank you guys. Our numbers have been off the charts. I'm honored that you have the faith in her and her reporting team to turn to in a time like this to find out what's happening in your state government's response. Usually there's a more fun intro, but Jim and Afton, I love the Stein. I normally am a lidded guy Stein. I'm not going to lie, but this is it's just perfectly done. It's clearly a German engineered no lid Stein. I hope you guys enjoyed having Randall Williams on with us, the director of DHSS. I thought he was great. I thought he was candid. I mean, you could agree or disagree with their decisions, but I thought him taking time to take any questions. Some of the questions were a little aggressive, and he let me ask him anything, and he let you ask him anything. So that was I thought that was really awesome. We've been talking to the Commissioner Vanderven of elementary and secondary education. I think she will have her on, but it may be tomorrow, maybe late today. I don't know. Obviously, her schedule is dependent upon events. Everything in state government, just like everything everywhere, is being touched by the coronavirus. It is it's not a normally we like to try to have a little fun on here more so than the TV show, but there's not a lot of fun to be had right now. I tell you, Jeff City is. I love Jeff City. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. It's a wonderful a community. It takes hosting the state capitol seriously, and it's always had a very special place in my heart and a place I've always enjoyed. But like I said, this is usually a really active, busy time. There's an energy in the air right before spring break. That obviously it's very different mood. You saw the state senate. The state senate was ahead of everybody. The state senate was ahead of the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, everyone in closing down. And so and the state house is trying to do. And here's the thing: I know there's people that want to give the House grief for no matter what they do. I get it. There's some partisanship. I know there's partisan Republicans. If the Democrats still had the majority and they were doing this, they would criticize them too. Look, nobody knows what to do. No, there's no playbook for this. We've never had a pandemic in the middle of a legislative session. Nobody knows what to do. You can't. I understand if you want to criticize people, and yes, that comes with leadership. If you're in leadership position, you sign up for the criticism. Elijah Hart's doing the very best he can do. I think that whole his staff, the floor leader, Rob Scovel's office, I believe Crystal Quade's office is not being overly partisan. They're doing the best that they can do in the situation. I have not seen anybody try to take a partisan advantage of this. Do I believe Lance they'll reconvene this session? I do. I actually do. The first point. Let me just skip down to a question. This is from Tom in Warrenton. What happens if they don't pass a budget? Well, I lived through one of these, so I can be I'm going to give you like an amateur Bob Pretty. Like I'm going to give you like the JV Bob Pretty. Like I'm 40. I'm old enough to tell you that I lived through one of these. Bob Holden did not sign a couple of the budget bills. He thought the Republican cuts were too big. So what happened, and I assume it'd be the same thing here, if there's no budget by the constitutional mandated date, which keep in mind is not the end of session. It's 2 weeks prior to the end of session. It's generally the end of April. That's why the last 2 weeks are always, and I don't know exactly the history of why that is, but I can tell you why it's good. Because if you get that out of the way, you still have 2 more weeks, so people don't play partisan politics with the budget as much. If it came down to the last day, you could hold that up and hijack it It's the people that founded our state. I know it's in vogue today to say everybody that's ever been elected is a corrupt career insider or whatever the demagogue perverted view of that is. But the guys that I love this state. I live here for a reason because I love it here. They come up with a pretty good state, and that was one of the good things they did. This would go into July. If you don't have a budget, the fiscal year ends June 30th in Missouri. So what happens is you come back in July automatically. Suppose you come back soon if you want to have a special session, but that takes, as we learned 2 years ago, 2/3 of the state legislature or the governor to call it. They would come back in and they would come back in and they would and ostensibly pass it. It really didn't. It upset a few people for about 3 days the last time. It really wasn't that big. Governor Holden, he closed down. It's like a school board when they try to pass a tax increase and then they don't. What do they? They cut the band in the football team, and I mean that happened. This is a different situation. It was the first time Republicans had the majority ever, and so in anybody's lifetime since Dick Webster, I think, was Speaker or floor leader maybe. So they would come back. There's really nothing. It's a day you need to get it done by, but if they don't, they don't. The House, I think, is doing some good things. I mean, they're doing some things that are that they need to do. You need to. It's not the time to pile on them. In my opinion, they're making the best decisions they can as it comes in. The reason they're here is because the House generally passes the budget first. It's always the old saying that the Senate makes the news, the House makes the Senate makes the laws, the House makes the news. Well, in the budget, that's where that's different. The budget starts in the House. It usually gets a better, more deeper vetting because there's fewer senators and they have so much floor action. It's very hard. So they're putting together a budget. There hasn't been, this budget's not been the revenue estimate they couldn't come to is probably worked out. The House wanted a much lower revenue estimate, lower than we were on track to see for sure. But this unexpected thing has made it more in line probably with what, or maybe it may even be higher. Because of what they do in Washington. It looks like Trump is taking it seriously. Yeah, and I got you. Chris in Harrisonville, a question. Yeah, did Trump screw this up? Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I think you know me. If you listen to me on the radio, television, or here, I see the good in President Trump. I think that if he did the same policies with a more George W. Bush style, be fine. But there is some truth to the fact that he acts like a jackass sometimes. And I'm white trash enough. I dig it a lot of times, but in this situation, if you shoot from the hip, you're gonna boomerang and hit yourself. You shoot yourself in the foot sometimes, and I think he did on this, honestly. And I like those of you that watch this know I have no reason to dog him, but he did. Looks like they're taking it seriously now. It's going to be I mean, hell, the fact is, as a conservative myself, there are times where socialism works, and you gotta, the key is to mix that cocktail right. It's a friend of mine, Victor Callahan, once said, "You have Republicans over here, Democrats over here." It's not until Bernie Sanders came along. The argument isn't are we going to be way over here or way over here. The argument was where from the middle are we going to be? And the truth of that is that we were, I believe we should be a little further to the right. Some good friends of mine, I saw Karen's on here. She probably leads a little more to the left of center. But the fact is, I don't believe we should be all the way to the right. And that would be a depression happens. And I really don't think people like Karen believe we should be all the way to the left because that doesn't work either. So this is the time where you're going to have to. They're going to try some socialism. George W. Bush did it after 9/11. I have a sense they're going to do it again here, and we'll see what happens. But I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll work. I think that we have a plan to come out of this. It won't be easy. We had a recession probably coming anyway, so we'll see what happens. Back to the budget. Yeah, I think they'll get it done. They're doing a couple things today. I was pulling up. Let me just read it to you. It's a thing Caitlin wrote yesterday. It said they were gonna do the full budget, which is a full day, and it's a lot of debate. They're not gonna do that. Instead, they're going to do a supplemental budget, I guess, to help fund some responses to the coronavirus, and then HB 2456 and House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2725. Those are generally responses to the coronavirus related stuff. Now, I'm getting texts today. They convened at 10. They went into recess till 11:30. I'm getting some texts today. Something's going on over there. I've heard some rumors too. I don't know exactly what. So I do something's up over there, but I have not, as you could tell by my Farm Bureau hat and Carhartt sweatshirt, I haven't been over there. I probably will head over this here after this before long and see what's up. But it's not. Yeah, I don't know what either. There's a lot of rumors in the air right now, but anytime you have one of these, you have a lot of speculation about a lot of things. I don't. Something's going on, but my instinct is that they'll get those things done. Now the state senate won't be in next week. If I had to guess, the state senate is probably what I've heard, and this would be your leaders coming together in a responsible manner. The House is going to probably have a couple floor amendments. They usually do for the budget. I think they'll come up with what that budget's going to look like when it goes to the Senate, and let the Senate Budget Committee begin meeting on what they think that should look like. And if you look at this, my brother-in-law's a doctor. There's a spike to this, and then it'll start to come down. How high that spike is, and how flat in the curve, everybody's flat in the curve. Um, I there is time to do this. I do think that our world begins to get better 2 weeks from now, right? I mean, I think that's they have plenty of time. But again, criticizing the House for being over there today, okay. I mean, if you this isn't the time to sit and bitch and whine. The What's the English thing? Keep calm, carry on. Well, maybe the hillbilly version of that is this ain't the time to bitch and whine. They're doing the best they know to do in a challenging situation. And as long as nobody gets partisan, as long as nobody picks petty fights, as long as paranoia doesn't set in, I think you're going to see the leadership in the House and Senate come to a way to work together. There was a guy, a buddy of mine, Patty Malone's last night, said, "Give this 2 weeks and see where we are." My gut tells me that's smart. Give this 2 weeks to see where we are. And so, what happens in 2 weeks, I don't know. But my gut tells me if we give this 2 weeks and then we just see where we are, we're all going to be a little bit better off. Let's talk about schools. 512 of 555 school districts have shut down. I get it. School folks would rather have the governor come in and tell them what to do and not pass the buck, but I think they would rather. I think that there's a lot of folks that would rather see this move from them, right? And have the governors come in and shut schools down. You do have some folks, and look, this is Trump. Trump started this and said this is a hoax. He had Fox News people were saying this is a hoax, and I've been wrong before. We've all been wrong before. It's not a hoax. This is real, and it hasn't worked. And to Trump's credit, I do believe he's turned that around, especially in the last few days, and is getting very, very proactive about things. So if you're going to criticize him and say you screwed this up by calling it a hoax, well, you're doing a better job now saying this isn't under control and all that. That's a course correction, something we hadn't seen Trump do or have to do, frankly, and that's because he's had a good run. But I will say this: I think going forward, the school districts shut your school down. Don't send your kid to school. Kip Kendrick, I'm sure other people probably did this first. Kip Kendrick had the idea of making schools held harmless, so that you get your funding anyway. The way schools are funded in Missouri is if you have a kid in that seat, you get paid by the state whatever some amount of money. So if the kids aren't in the seats, they don't get paid. And I know you're thinking, well, the superintendent needs to buy both. Sometimes, yeah, but for the most part, you have to pay the light bill. You have to pay that fourth grade teacher to be there, and so it's not. I mean, I guess the normal things where you would criticize people and throw stones seem petty and not real right now. But anyway, so I don't. I mean, if the governor hasn't done it yet, and 512 schools are out, a lot of those are on spring break. You want local control until you get local control. You want local control when you can. It's situational. It's school politics in the state of Missouri. It goes back a very long way. You want local control until it's a tough decision you don't want to make, and then you'd rather somebody else make it. I would venture that every school district in this state that's shut down will see no negative ramifications. And I don't know if the ones that are still having school will, but I'll predict to you that no school district that is shut down will have any negative effects. But I'm gonna tell you, both my parents worked when I was a kid, and had to. And my grandmother lived down through the field, and she could watch me most days, most any day, frankly. Not everybody has a grandmother that lives just down through the field, and shutting down schools is maybe is good on some levels, but boy, you put some folks in some binds too, and you got to think about that kid that lives in a trailer on a gravel road whose family ain't around, and and parents have to work so that they can eat. And right now, when you're worried that any day you could get laid off, like the Riverfront Times staff, you figure you better show up to work. What's that? I mean, what do you do with that child? And so there's theoretical problems that people in Chesterfield have, and I get that, but there's also real life problems that people have in Naylor, Missouri, or in Rawls County, and those are real things. And while you may see, oh, this is obvious for your situation, there's other people that may have a different situation. And while I think at this point probably made sense when the president said don't have 10 people together to cancel schools, but the governor has a lot of things he has to weigh out. And I would say 95% of Missouri school children aren't in school today. And what's wrong with having the school board? I think the answer to this. Now, here's the interesting part: when this is over and you do the recap on it, then you're going to have people come back and say, "Well, now wait a minute, you've let charter schools. We want the local. You trusted local people to decide a deadly virus. Trust local school boards." And so, again, give this 2 weeks set back. I think that when in a calm recollection of this could be good for some school people that are demanding the governor shut their schools down. You may use this later as a proof of concept that local controls are a good thing. And so, it's just my take on it. Let's talk about flooding. It's this time of year in Missouri. There's a ditch out here. I've tried to. There's less of me doing this video than there was this time last year. So I try to get my little Fitbit here. Fat guy tracking, and there's a ditch that you can almost chart that comes off the Missouri River. It goes past Mill Bottom up by the Truman Building. When that ditch gets about half full, that river is seeing more water than normal. And that ditch is about half full right now. It's a hillbillyology of how you chart the flooding of the Missouri River, but it's usually not off. And so the mayors on the Mississippi River are gonna have a press conference tomorrow. Man, how much can you throw at one people at one time? This would be what my mom used to call the end times. You start seeing floods and deadly viruses. And I predicted this when I saw the Cubs win the World Series. By the way, that this was the end times. So the flooding's real, but everything really is related to coronavirus. The governor's doing these press conferences now, but he's got to rope off. I see people whine and complain about not being 6 foot apart. Well, it is what it is. I mean, I get it. We all have social media now. We see something funny. I do it. I'm just as guilty. But maybe it's not the time to pull some of those type things. Maybe it's a time to take a breath and as my buddy Patty said, give it 2 weeks, see what happens. I would encourage all of you. Now, this is not coronavirus related. Yesterday, Patty Malone's, the historic Irish pub in Jefferson City. It's the 20th anniversary of Alan Tapman owning it and his wife, Mary Lee. I sit down for about a half hour, and we had the best talk. We talked about hogs, dogs, and logs, how he come to own Patty's, his views on certain things. We didn't get into conservation. Shout out to Representative Jeff Knight. But we did get into Irish history, Irish politics. We got into we settled the great debate between the better bar patron between a famous German Missourian and a famous Irish Missourian. It went as you would predict it would have went by an Irishman in an Irish pub on St. Patrick's Day Eve. But maybe in Oktoberfest we'll revisit this, and maybe he can interview me and we'll talk German culture, and I'll answer the question. And my answer might be different come late September. But I don't know if we're gonna have a show this week. I just don't know. That was a good question. I'm not sure if we'll have a show. We'll see. I don't know. I think, like with everybody, this situation seems to be changing hour to hour, and I'm not sure if we're going to have a show if we're not. Stein Knowledge. I wish I had more actual knowledge for you. If you want real knowledge, go to Missouri Times, Twitter, Facebook. Caitlin Shellham's Twitter profile. You should follow her. She's been all over this story from the jump. From the Wednesday night where this story, I think, for all of us kind of went to, that's really bad for those people in China, to, wow, this is coming here, to now. I saw the last pizza served at Harris Pizza last night. I do believe probably sometime tomorrow you're going to see Jefferson City businesses start to close. St. Louis, I think tomorrow is the last day you can go in and get a steak at the Capitol Grill. I think St. Louis was shutting down. Kansas City shut down. And we're watching to see if that is if that's going to be what happens for the rest of the state. I don't know that the governor is going to come out and say everybody has to close, and I don't know that he should. I also think, look, The dangerous part about this is we are all in this together, because it's not like, some diseases spread by if you do one or two certain things that you could choose not to do, that a lot of the public didn't do, to start with. However, this disease, this virus is spread. You could passively just go to the grocery store, pick up a can of pickles, put them back down, and then touch your face, and you're sick. So this is a very different thing than anybody's ever seen before. I would say this, cut the leaders a little slack. It's not like anybody could sit back and watch this. If there's another pandemic 4 or 5 years from now, we'll all be able to say, well, I remember back then they did this and this worked, and they did this and this didn't work. Right now, they're doing the best they can do. I would say cut the house guys some slack and how they approach things. They're doing what they know to do. If you took a different, every one of the decisions they're making, if they took the opposite decision, you could have the same types of critiques. But give a little thought to the uniqueness of the situation, and go listen to my conversation with Alan Tapman. It's at MissouriTimes.com, talking about patties. It will be a fun 30-minute break from the end of the world, and I will be back. We're going to do a live stream. I don't know if it'll be with Commissioner Van Dieven or not, but we'll bring you a live stream. Somebody in state government, kind of tell them what's going on. My sister's calling, by the way. She's great. You guys would love her. It's her tax time of year and coronavirus, and she's got a newborn, so she's especially fun to talk to. But we'll give you updates on the website. I wish the site of knowledge was more full than it is today. Last thing I want to do is give a shout out. There's UFCW guy. His name's Jeff. He's at the local Schnucks. I got up this morning and went and got some food. He was coming through the line, right, and it was an interesting thing to me. And I knew who he was, just because I go to Schnucks, and I usually go while I'm returning phone calls early in the morning. And so I come through the line, and he's greeting everybody, going out of his way to be very nice, very warm. And I'll tell you, it was an eerie feeling. There was some shelves at Schnucks that the bread was picked through. I didn't see the toilet paper. Maybe I didn't see it because it's gone. I don't know I've not had a toilet paper problem, but I understand it's gone. And so there's an eerie feeling in the air right now. It's one of those dreary, gray days. And this guy, Jeff, was at Schnucks, and everyone in his line, he was like, "How are you doing? Good to see you." He was changing the karma, and he did for me today. And I give him a shout out. To proud UFCW members, a good dude, and it was maybe a lesson. Maybe we can all take a little bit, is reach out and try to be the guy that changes the karma, or the woman that changes the karma in your situation. And thank you guys very much. Love you guys. Love you Facebook. Love you Twitter. Love you the YouTube viewers. We will do these. We'll be back, if nothing else, at 11. I'll come back and we'll talk. We're going to have the show. I'm not sure. We'll have to do it from Kansas City if we do it. We'll see what happens. Thank